I accepted a job in Toronto, he explained. It's been in the works for months. I haven't told Claire yet or my parents. I wasn't ready, Emma blinked, her thoughts scattering. She had expected something, maybe work stress, maybe a breakup she hadn't known about. But this? Leaving? Moving across the country? Toronto? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. It's a big step, more responsibility, new challenges. The kind of opportunity I'd be stupid to turn down. Emma forced a small smile. Well, that sounds like a good thing, right? You've always been ambitious. It's amazing for you. Daniel didn't return the smile. Instead, he looked at her with an intensity that made her heart skip. That's not the real reason I took it, he said quietly. Emma froze. Her hands gripped the counter behind her, trying to steady herself as a strange feeling began to rise inside her. What do you mean? She asked softly. Daniel looked away for a moment, staring at the floor like he was ashamed. When he spoke again, his voice was low, almost trembling. I thought moving away would be easier than staying here. Easier than pretending. Emma's chest tightened. Pretending? Pretending what? She whispered. His eyes lifted back to hers, and the vulnerability in them nearly broke her. Pretending that I don't feel more for you than I should. The room went silent, except for the steady hum of the dishwasher. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She had to have misheard him. Daniel, the man she had known for years, her best friend's brother, couldn't possibly mean what she thought he meant. But his eyes told her otherwise. He wasn't joking. He wasn't playing games. He meant every word. Emma's mind spun. Years. Daniel had been a fixture in her life, always on the edges, never stepping closer. She had never allowed herself to think of him in that way. He was safe, reliable, almost like family. And yet, she remembered that flicker at dinner. The way his gaze had lingered. The way her own heart had stuttered in response. She remembered the feeling that had unsettled her. The realization that maybe she had never really known him at all. Now here he was, confessing something that could shatter everything. I don't understand, Emma whispered. Her voice shook, betraying the storm inside her. Daniel, Claire is my best friend. You're her brother. We've known each other for years. Why would you? He cut her off gently. Do you think I chose this? Do you think I wanted to fall for someone I wasn't supposed to? The pain in his voice was real. Emma's breath trembled as she searched his face. How long? Daniel's jaw clenched. Longer than I'll ever admit to anyone else. Her heart ached at his honesty, at the weight of what he was revealing. Why now? She asked finally, her voice breaking. Why tell me tonight? He stepped closer, not too close, but close enough that she felt the air shift between them. Because I couldn't leave without you knowing, he said simply. Emma's chest tightened painfully. Part of her wanted to run, to put distance between herself and the storm his words had unleashed. But another part, deeper and more dangerous, wanted to step into that storm. Wanted to know what it would feel like to let herself see him not as Claire's brother, not as a family friend, but as a man who had just laid his heart bare in front of her. Her hands trembled against the counter. Daniel, you can't just say something like that, she whispered. You can't just drop it on me and expect me to. I don't expect anything, he interrupted, his voice steady but his eyes raw. I just needed you to know. That's all. Emma turned away, pacing a few steps before stopping, her hands gripping her arms. The room felt too small, her emotions too loud. You don't understand, she said. her voice rising with desperation. If Claire ever found out if your parents knew, it would destroy so much. I can't be that person. I know, he said quietly. Then why? She stopped, pressing her hands to her face. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she lowered her hands, meeting his eyes again. You're leaving because of me? Daniel didn't flinch. I'm leaving because seeing you, pretending I don't feel this, it's harder than walking away. Her heart broke at his words. Daniel. Her voice cracked. She didn't know what she wanted to say. She didn't know if she wanted to beg him to stay or tell him to go. Because the truth was, in the quietest corners of her heart, she didn't want him to walk away, and that terrified her. For a long time they just stood there, caught between everything they wanted to say and everything they COULDN single quotes. Emma felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. The man she thought she knew had just become someone else entirely, someone who looked at her with longing, someone who had been carrying a secret that could change both their lives. Her heart whispered one thing, her mind another. And as Daniel's eyes searched hers, waiting for something, anything, Emma realized she was standing at a crossroads. One choice could pull her into something beautiful and dangerous. The other could protect her, but leave her wondering forever. She didn't know which way to go. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling as the city outside hushed into silence. The shadows on her walls shifted with the headlights of passing cars, but her thoughts stayed fixed on one man. Daniel. The way he had looked at her. The way his voice had cracked when he confessed. The way her heart had betrayed her with every racing beat. She pressed her palms to her face, trying to will the thoughts away. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was Claire's brother. He was a part of her life in a way that should have made him untouchable. And yet, now that he had spoken, she couldn't forget. By morning, her eyes were heavy, but her decision was made. She couldn't ignore him, not after what he had revealed. When her phone buzzed with a message, coffee, Harbor Cafe, 10 a.m., her heart leapt and sank all at once. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should say no. She should let him go. Let him move to Toronto. Let this entire thing fade into silence. But instead she typed back, I'll be there. The Harbor Cafe was quiet when she arrived, its large windows overlooking the grey Seattle waterfront. The smell of fresh coffee wrapped around her as she stepped inside. Daniel was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. His shirt was crisp, but his shoulders slumped, and there was a heaviness in his eyes that tugged at her heart. When he saw her, he stood, almost too quickly, like he wasn't sure she would actually. Come, Emma, he breathed, as though her name was both a relief and a wound. She slid into the seat across from him, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup, more for comfort than warmth. For a moment neither of them spoke. The silence stretched thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Emma broke it. Daniel, why me? He blinked, startled. What do you mean? Out of everyone you could meet, out of everyone in this city, you chose me? Your sister's best friend. You've carried this for how long? Why me? His jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. Because you've always seen me, he said quietly. Not just Claire's brother, not just the guy who shows up at family dinners. You talk to me. You notice things others don't. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being able to ignore what that meant. Her chest ached at his words. Daniel, do you have any idea what this does to me? She whispered. Claire is my best friend. She trusts me. If she ever found out.
I know, he interrupted softly. That's why I'm leaving.
I can't ask you to betray her. I can't even ask you for anything at all. I needed you to know before I go. Because living with silence felt worse than leaving. Emma looked down at her coffee, her hands trembling. Her mind screamed at her to walk away, to let him go and keep her life simple. But her heart was traitorous. It remembered every flicker of his gaze, every quiet moment when he had been there in ways no one else was. She thought of the summer. Claire had broken her ankle, how Daniel had shown up at her apartment with groceries for both of them. No questions asked. She thought of the night she had been stuck with a dead car battery, and he had driven across town at midnight just to help. She thought of every quiet kindness, every small smile, every steady presence she had taken for granted. Maybe she had always known. Maybe she had just refused to let herself see it. Her eyes lifted to his, and for a moment, all the fear and hesitation fell away. Daniel, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't want you to leave. The words hung between them, fragile and trembling. Daniel froze, his breath catching in his chest. Emma, she shook her head quickly, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't know what this means. I don't know what happens next. But last night, when you said you were leaving, it felt like someone was pulling the ground out from under me. And I can't pretend that doesn't mean something. His hand twitched on the table as if he wanted to reach for hers, but didn't dare. Are you saying? His voice cracked. Emma's lips trembled. I'm saying I don't want to. Stop trying to know you. The real you. Not the man I thought I knew all these years. The one you've been hiding. For the first time in days, Daniel's smile reached his eyes. It wasn't wide. It wasn't triumphant. It was soft, gentle, like a man finally breathing after holding. His breath too long. Emma, he whispered. And this time, he did reach across the table. His fingers brushed against hers, tentative, waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. Emma Bennett had always believed that some people were as easy to read as an open book. Daniel Carter was one of those people, or so she thought. For nearly 10 years, Emma had known him in the periphery of her life. He was Claire's older brother, 3 years senior, the one who rarely lingered at parties but always showed up when it mattered. Emma's memories of him were stitched together through birthdays, barbecues, and family gatherings. He was the quiet presence who fetched extra chairs when there weren't enough, who carried heavy bags of groceries without complaint, who offered a small smile when others filled the room with laughter. To Emma, Daniel was steady, predictable, safe. She used to joke with Claire that her brother was like a dependable shade tree. You didn't notice it until you needed shelter, and there it was, unshaken by storms. But on that crisp autumn evening in Seattle, Emma began to realize she had underestimated him. The Carter's family home sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees, their leaves glowing gold and red in the fading light. Emma parked her car in front and sat there for a moment, staring at the warm windows of the house she had visited countless times. The air was sharp with the smell of fallen leaves and wood smoke, and somewhere down the block, children were laughing as they dragged bags of candy from an early Halloween outing. It was supposed to be a simple evening, a small dinner with close friends and family. Nothing unusual. Claire had begged Emma to come early and help her set the table, as she often did. Emma smoothed her sweater, grabbed the pie she had baked, and walked up the familiar steps. When the door opened, Claire greeted her with her usual whirlwind of energy, hugging her, complimenting her sweater, and immediately pulling her inside with chatter about how she was running behind schedule. The house smelled like roasted chicken, rosemary, and fresh bread.
Emma felt instantly at home, as she always did in the Carter's house. "Come on,"
Claire urged, leading her into the dining room where plates were stacked in a messy pile.
"I swear, if Daniel doesn't show up soon with the wine, my mom is going to have a fit. She keeps saying she wants tonight to feel grown up, whatever that means."
Emma laughed, setting the pie down.
"You know your brother. He'll come through.
He always does."
Claire rolled her eyes.
"Yeah, but on his own schedule."
Emma smiled, but something about the way she said it lingered. She had always thought of Daniel as reliable, but now she wondered if maybe Claire saw him differently, saw sides of him Emma had never known. The evening unfolded gently. Claire's parents moved around the kitchen, humming with activity, while Claire fussed with candles on the table. Emma busied herself arranging silverware, folding napkins, and listening to the familiar family banter. But when Daniel finally arrived, everything shifted. He came in quietly, as he often did, carrying a bottle of wine in one hand and a jacket slung over his arm. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened from the day's work, and his hair looked slightly tousled, as though he had run his hands through it too many times. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice low but warm. Traffic was impossible.
Emma
Looked up and something caught her off guard. Daniel looked different. Not drastically, not in any way that could be explained simply by clothes or hair. But there was a weight in his eyes, something unspoken. His smile was polite, but his gaze lingered a second too long on the floor before it rose to meet hers. "Wine delivery, as promised," he said, setting the bottle on the counter. Claire gave him a playful glare. "You're lucky you made it," before Mom started pacing. He gave a small laugh, though it sounded hollow, as if he were only half present. Emma noticed it immediately. His laugh. Daniel was known for his easy chuckle, the kind that made you feel like you had said something clever even if you hadn't. But tonight it was different. Shorter. She caught herself staring longer than she meant to.
And when
Daniel's eyes flicked to hers, she quickly busied herself with the napkins again. Dinner began the way all Carter family dinners did: loud conversation, gentle teasing, and too much food. Emma sat beside Claire, across from Daniel. She found herself watching him more than usual, studying the way he pushed food around his plate when he thought no one was looking, the way he sometimes pressed his lips together like he was holding back a thought. "Work's been busy?" Mr. Carter asked him between bites. Daniel hesitated before answering. "Yeah, more than usual." "Good busy?" His mother chimed in hopefully. Daniel nodded, but the hesitation was still there. "Good, I suppose." Emma tilted her head slightly. She had heard him talk about his job before. He worked in finance, a field Emma found impossibly complicated. But Daniel usually explained things with simple ease. Tonight, though, he offered no details, just vague responses, as though he didn't want to open the door to more questions. Claire didn't seem to notice. She was too busy telling a story about a disastrous date one of her co-workers had gone on, making everyone laugh. Emma joined in the laughter, but her eyes kept drifting back to Daniel. And then, halfway through dinner, it happened. For the briefest moment, their eyes met across the table. His gaze wasn't casual, it was searching. Deep. Almost vulnerable. It startled Emma, because it was unlike any look Daniel had ever given her. It wasn't the polite smile of a friend's brother. It wasn't casual familiarity. It was something heavier, more intense. Emma's heart stuttered. She quickly looked away, focusing on the candle flickering in front of her, pretending she hadn't felt that flicker inside her chest. The evening went on, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling. She thought back to all the years she had known Daniel. He had always been kind, always thoughtful, but never more than that. She had categorized him neatly in her mind: reliable, safe, predictable. The kind of man you could trust with anything, but never the kind you would imagine holding secrets. And yet, tonight, he seemed like a man carrying the weight of an entire unspoken story. By the time dessert was served, Emma was restless. She tried to focus on Claire's chatter, on the warmth of the family around her, but her thoughts kept circling back to Daniel. Who was this man sitting across from her? Why did he suddenly feel like a stranger? When the plates were cleared and Claire's parents began retreating to the living room with their coffee, Emma started gathering her things, preparing to leave. But then Daniel's voice stopped her. "Emma," he said quietly, his eyes steady on hers. "Could you stay for a little while, after everyone else heads to bed?" Her heart skipped. There was nothing improper in his tone, nothing dramatic. Just calm, steady Daniel asking a simple question. And yet, the way he asked it made her pulse race. Emma nodded before she even knew why. And that was the moment, the shift. The point where Emma realized the man she thought she knew might not be the man standing in front of her at all. The rest of the evening blurred. Claire disappeared upstairs. Her parents settled in front of the TV, and Emma found herself in the kitchen alone, waiting. The hum of the dishwasher filled the silence, and the air seemed heavier somehow, charged with something she couldn't name. When Daniel finally stepped into the room, rolling up his sleeves and running a hand through his hair, Emma's breath caught. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same after this night. The hum of the dishwasher filled the silence as Emma stood in the Carter family's kitchen, her fingers brushing over the edge of the counter just to have something to ground herself. She told herself she should leave, that she should say goodnight, thank Claire's parents, and drive home to her quiet apartment. But instead, she stayed. She stayed because of the way Daniel had asked her, because of the look in his eyes when he said her name, because, against all logic, her heart had started racing in a way she couldn't ignore. The sound of footsteps grew closer. A moment later, Daniel stepped into the doorway. He didn't look like the man she thought she knew. He had taken off his jacket, and his sleeves were still rolled up. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly messy, and there was something almost restless in the way he carried himself. His eyes met hers, and for a second, he didn't say anything at all. Emma's breath caught. "Thank you for staying," Daniel said at last, his voice low, careful. She swallowed, her throat dry. "Of course. Is everything okay?" He let out a breath, leaning against the counter across from her. His hands braced on the edge, his knuckles pale as though he were holding something in. "That's a complicated question," he admitted with a faint, humorless smile. Emma shifted uncomfortably, unsure of where this was going. She had always known Daniel as calm, steady, reliable. He wasn't the kind of man who asked someone to stay behind after dinner. He wasn't the kind of man who spoke in riddles. But tonight, nothing about him felt familiar. "Daniel," she said gently, "you're starting to worry me." His eyes softened when they met hers, but the weight behind them only grew heavier. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I don't mean to put this on you. It's just, tonight, sitting across from you, I realized I couldn't keep it to myself anymore." Emma's chest tightened. Keep what to himself? He hesitated, his jaw tightening as though he were choosing his words carefully. Then, finally, he spoke. "I'm leaving Seattle," he said. The words hit her like cold water. "You're what?"